From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good evening. My name is Gregory Most. I am president of the Art Library Society of North America, and I hope I've welcomed you at some time to the conference, but now I'm delighted to welcome you to our convocation. And what I would like to do now is have Roberta I. Schaefer, who's the Associate Librarian for Library Services here in the Library of Congress, come and welcome you to this beautiful building.
Good evening. It really is quite an honor for me on behalf of James H. Billington, the Librarian of Congress, and my many colleagues here at the Library of Congress to welcome you and to be one of the sponsors of this evening's event. The theme is most intriguing, and I think it aligns well with the Library of Congress's collections. We've amended it a little bit in our mind to sort of have it be art, politics, and the art of possibility, which is really what libraries are all about. They enable you to hearken back to the collective creativity and intellectual output of humankind, and then to think about what is new and what is possible from that incredible mine of riches. And the Library of Congress is incredibly rich, an incredibly rich institution, not only because of our enormous collections and the variety of their formats, music, sheets of music, manuscripts, maps, books, movies, prints and photographs, of course, incredibly rich in this area. And the other area which we are incredibly rich in, and I think in the course of the next several days you will see this if you haven't already worked with my colleagues here, just what an incredible staff we have and how they bring our collections alive for all of our users from K through full adulthood. There are two people I would like to just do a shout out to tonight. They're two of my colleagues, and they have been working incredibly hard to make this whole conference, but particularly the part of it or parts of it that will take place at the library, a rich experience for you. And so if you will just join me in a small clapping for Kathy Woodrell and Megan Halsband. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy and Megan, on behalf of all of us who work at the Library of Congress, for really making us look fantastic. Please enjoy the evening. I don't think I need to say this to art librarians. Maybe I would need to say it to chemistry librarians or some others, but do look up and all around you all evening. As Greg said, this is an incredible building. It is beautiful, but it is just always inspiring. For those of us who work here, believe it or not, every day you walk through and you continue to gain energy and enrichment from just walking through the building the part of the building where we'll have the reception this evening, the Great Hall. So please look up and look around you. Every day when I walk through, I see something I never saw before, and I can't imagine that the mosaicist was able to do that piece of art overnight, but they are. Please also know that we'll have exhibitions open, and our gift shop is staying open till 8:30, so you can bring things home to colleagues who could not enjoy the conference. Thank you so much for giving me the podium, and I know we have an exciting evening ahead of us.
Thank you so much, Roberta. We're just delighted to be here. I would like to introduce our other sponsor of the evening, Stephen Brooks from ProQuest.
You can't see any of them, can you? It's great. I wish I had a light shining in my face at work all day long. Thank you very much. I'm a long-time fan, first-time attendee. I don't have the first-timers ribbon, but I did sneak into the reception and help myself to a drink last night, and it was great to meet many of the other people attending for the first time. I came over on the metro tonight. I imagine an awful lot of you did. And I'm wondering if I alone was uttering a silent prayer for the lights to flicker, the train to grind to a halt, and for somebody experiencing a sudden emergency of bibliography, to look up and despairingly say, I know it's a long shot, but is there an art librarian on board? And that's really, that's what's... And I did make that up on the walk up from the station. But that's what's really special about this conference. I've been genuinely blown away by the quality of, well, the quality of everything, the quality of the quality of catering. I mean, ice cream, really? I don't know who sponsored the breaks, but if it's one of our competitors, thank you very much. The quality of the sessions and the papers that have been delivered, the energy and the enthusiasm of the special interest groups. I've been to some fairly newish interest groups, and you can see the kind of continuing development and growth of the organization as new topics take hold and new people get together to plan where they're taking art. I think everybody in this room is, you all deserve a round of applause for being such tremendous and passionate advocates, both for the arts and the art of librarianship. ProQuest, we really hope that we can be there on the journey with you, doing what we can to support you and your patrons, whether it's through looking at a 16th century edition of a manual by Dwyer, following or tracing the increased recognition given to Fritz Scholder in the 1980s, judging, and believe me, I do, the artistic merits of a monarch in Queen Victoria's journals and sketchbooks, or tracing the decline of the English stately home, not just by watching Downton Abbey, but through the pages of country life. We want to be there supplying resources and tools that you can pass on to your researchers to help them realize their ambitions. A love of the arts is very much in our DNA at ProQuest and in all of the organizations that over the years have come together to form ProQuest. I didn't press my slide, did I? We'll get there. You may have to. No, I'm not going to overrun. We love the arts, and we have a number of connections with the arts. And the chairman of our parent company, Cambridge Information Group, Mr. Bob Snyder, is a huge advocate for the arts and a believer in the importance of the arts and their role in society. So I can assure you that we intend to stay good friends to ARLIS in the years to come. And not just ARLIS, but the community you represent. Let's just, there. That should finish about the same time I do now. The community you represent and the patrons that the art library community serves. We believe it's a fundamental part of a fully rounded society, and we applaud the work you're doing, and I think you're doing it very, very well indeed. So thank you very much for having me here this evening and for allowing ProQuest to be a part of your conference. And I hope you have a splendid time tonight, and I really do. Thank you.
Fortunately, I know the order. He says. Okay. Before we begin our program, I would be remiss to not thank the many sponsors who make the conference possible. I think we have all realized that our fees do not always cover everything that we enjoy at the conference, whether it's audiovisual or a lovely reception. So I'd like to take this opportunity now to thank our many sponsors. Our society affiliate platinum sponsors are Dumbarton Oaks Research Library and Collection, the Library of Congress, where we are here this evening, ProQuest, the Samuel H. Kress Foundation, and the Washington Art Library Resources Committee. Our silver sponsors are, our gold sponsors are Ars Libri Limited, Art Store, the chapters of ARLIS NA, all of you, the National Gallery of Art, the National Museum of Women in the Arts, and Oxford University Press. Our society affiliate sponsors are F.A. Burnett Books, H.W. Wilson Foundation, and the Smithsonian Libraries. Our bronze sponsors are Amateur de Livre International, Christie's, and Christie's Education, Eastview Information Services, Erasmus Book Handler, Fine Art Connoisseur, Innovative, the Media Preserve, Napa Valley Caterers, OCLC, Art Discovery Group Catalog, Quinn's Auction Galleries, the University of Maryland Library, and Worldwide Books. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors. Tonight, I'd also like to thank specifically the National Museum of Women in the Arts for providing funding for our keynote speaker tonight, Susan Stamberg. Susan Stamberg is a legendary broadcast journalist who has been on and associated with National Public Radio since 1971. Familiar to most of us as the host of All Things Considered, Weekend Edition, Morning Edition, and now as a special correspondent to NPR, who reports on all variety of cultural matters. Ms. Stamberg was, for me, that comforting voice that came on the radio every day in the slide library that informed and enlightened those of us present as we worked. She's notoriously famous for telling the story and providing a recipe for cranberry relish every Thanksgiving. Putatively, her mother-in-law's recipe, I carefully wrote it down one year and prepared it for Thanksgiving. I will admit the vivid pink side dish was not well received by my friends, but I thought it was a welcome change. She was inducted into the Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 1994, and 2 years later into the Radio Hall of Fame. She is also the recipient of a number of awards, including the Edward R. Murrow Award from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the Distinguished Broadcaster Award from the American Women in, and I can't read the rest of this, I'm sorry, I had a little blurb. The American Women in Broadcasting? Okay. You have so many. I mean, literally, the list is this long. It's amazing. In addition to her work as a broadcast journalist, Ms. Stamberg is also the author of 2 books. Susan Stamberg's All Things Considered book from 1982, and Talk, NPR's Susan Stamberg Considers All Things of 1993. We are fortunate to have such an accomplished and distinguished person to open our convocation, and I'm delighted to present Susan Stamberg.
You didn't say such terrible things about my recipe, but I noticed you only made it once. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me here to the mothership of all libraries. I love to come over here, and I love librarians. The ones we have at National Public Radio are the beauty and the brains of our organization, I'll tell you. We used to have a designated area for the librarians, and that was wonderful because they were easy to find. Now they have been embedded. So you'll find one near the Washington desk and one near the foreign desk and one. So as a dense mass, they no longer exist. But their brains and their brilliance and their beauty remain, and they save us every day. They're the ones who keep us honest and correct. So God love you all for that. The title of this speech, I know your theme is art and politics, but I never discuss politics, and I make it a point not to interview politicians because they'll rarely say anything that's not on the Rolodex card in their head. I like people who think aloud with me on the radio. So the title of the speech is Art Will Save the World. There's a subtitle, If Anything Can. I'll explain. Not long ago, I read about a study at the University College London. They found out that you get the same kind of buzz looking at a great work of art that you do from looking at your sweetie pie. The pleasure centers of your brain get activated. You got Monet, you got Da Vinci, you got honey. Same healthy zing for all three. And another study, this one was in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health, which is always my favorite read. Another study found that our happiness and health levels are boosted by going to museums, concerts, ballet. So you see the tremendous power that the arts can have. I grew up in Manhattan, although I'm sure from my accent you think I'm a Southern belle. I always wanted to be a Southern belle. Anyway, every Saturday of my young life, my father would take me to one or the other of our city's great museums. And my husband, Lou Stamberger, and I raised our son, Josh, exactly that way here in Washington, D.C. We dragged him kicking and screaming away from the soccer field and into Greg's National Gallery or into the Phillips or the Air and Space Museum. And later in his and my life, I realized how wise we were to have forced him into museums, because to this day, and he's 44 years old now, the very first, or one of the very first things that Josh will do in any city that he's visiting for the very first time is go to the museum. Any museum. Anywhere, because there'll always be at least one thing, one treasure that will intrigue or provoke or enchant or puzzle or annoy him, that's fine too, cause some kind of reaction, prompt an emotion, and maybe challenge an assumption. And that's more of the power of art. In the 70s and 80s, anchoring All Things Considered every weekday and pantingly trying to keep up with so many shifting events, deadlines, pressures, all of it, the thing that kept me sane through those heavy news years were the arts. Ezra Pound, said that poetry is news that stays news. It's wonderful, isn't it? Poetry is news that stays news. And I got through hectic news days by knowing that at maybe 3 or 4 in the afternoon, in those days we went on the air at 5, I might also interview a poet, or John Updike, or Stephen Sondheim. His papers are in this library, by the way. He just gave them not so long ago. Or maybe talk to a painter, or at least get to talk about a painter with some fabulous curator. So the carrot of my news day was that at some point in that day, I would get a chance to talk with somebody involved in the arts, someone whose life was dedicated to things that last. Ever since I stopped anchoring the daily news broadcast, I've spent decades reporting on and talking mostly with people in the visual arts. I love how impossible that is. How do you talk about painting on the radio? But when I cover those stories, and I want Warhol or Vermeer or Rothko, Gauguin, whatever I'm reporting on at the time, I try to hold the prints and paintings up to the microphone. So you think I'm kidding. So the listeners can see what I've seen. When we first started going online a lot, those librarians got very excited about being able to put these images up on people's computers, and I, in my arrogance, said, look, don't be silly, they don't need to look at the actual thing. My descriptions, if they can't go to a library to see them, my description should make it vivid enough. Well, I got over that in about 7 years. Ezra Pound is right that poetry is news that stays news, but I would broaden the statement. I think painting is news that stays news, so is theater, music, and very often I feel that a major value of the arts is the fact that they are not news, that they don't change tomorrow, that they stand for represent eternals. I'll go back to a terrible date in our history for evidence of this, September 11th, 2001. On that day, and also in the awful days immediately afterwards, as a public radio listener, because I'm that too, as well as a correspondent, I found myself feeling utterly and sometimes helplessly inundated by the daily wash of anxiety-making information that we were broadcasting after the attacks. Putting out all that information is absolutely essential part of the jobs that we do as journalists. We have to get out as much as we can find out about what it is that's going on. But it struck me that we have obligations to our listeners that go beyond the daily conveyance of facts and analysis. And I asked myself how I, as a broadcaster, and also a person with a deep love of the arts, could add something different to the mix that we were putting out on the air every day. I'm an interviewer, but we were running loads of interviews. And I'm a reporter, but we were running lots and lots of reports. So what contribution was there for me to make? And the answer came quickly and rather obviously, especially as I noticed my own reactions whenever a brief piece of music, standing in my kitchen in the morning, preparing breakfast, listening to the radio, and hearing whenever a piece of music, a brief little piece, we call them buttons, that interstitial music that goes between the various reports. Whenever that came on, running between the various grim reports, those 10 or 20, sometimes 30 seconds of music created a resting place. The music helped me as a listener to clear my mind a little bit and to help me prepare for the bad news that was coming next. So as a listener, music became the answer to my question about the contribution that I could make as a broadcaster. But I felt that the music needed to run longer than 20 seconds. Why don't we do a minute and a half, or 2 minutes? And I have to tell you, that is major airtime, believe it or not, on our morning news program, 2 minutes. 2 minutes smack in the middle of all the information that we're putting out every single day. Take a breath from talking in order to communicate in a different way. And why not turn to the artists of our country and ask them for help? Morning Edition producers, to their credit, liked the idea because it was a rather unusual and certainly a format-breaking idea. They said okay. And we started with Leon Fleischer, who is considered one of our greatest classical pianists. Mr. Fleischer is a remarkable person with a remarkable history, and I came to know his story through the course of other reporting I did on him. At a high point in his pianistic career, he loses the use of his right hand. He probably had carpal tunnel syndrome, but although there wasn't that term for it then, throughout his lifetime he had practiced so much and so forcefully that he had abused that hand, and it just quit on him. So you can imagine, he was devastated. He tried various surgeries and therapies, physical ones, emotional therapies. But eventually, this extraordinary artist pulled himself together. He realized that he simply could not sit around feeling sorry for himself for the rest of his life, and he started researching the repertoire to find piano music written for the left hand alone. And he played his way through that in public, through concerts. And after he ran through that repertoire, he began commissioning pieces for left hand, and he played them too. A few years back, very hesitantly, Leon Fleischer began performing again with both hands. But in an interview shortly after he'd given his first two-handed concerts again, he told me he was never sure that he could count on that right hand. Still, he persisted. So now, thinking about getting this post-9/11 project on the air, Leon Fleischer seemed to be the perfect person to launch the series. I called him up and I said, please, could you pick a piece of music that you would like the country to be listening to right now? And then tell us why you want us to hear it, and then we'll listen to it, a bit of it. Fleischer's choice was Ode to Joy. Isn't that extraordinary? The last movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and it's music about the brotherhood of humankind, Fleischer said. It inspires heroism and selflessness, and it helps to arouse our commitments to ideals and principles. Well, you know, we couldn't have hoped for a better beginning. And our listeners agreed. We got a flood of emails applauding Fleischer, the music that he chose, the whole idea of playing it, thanking us for starting this occasional series. And that mail was just so gratifying. A listener wrote, the arts remind us that we are indeed created in the image of God. Fallen as we are still capable of immense wonder. Thanks for helping us remember and celebrate these things in our time of grief. Also in that series, I called it Music for America. Leonard Slatkin picked Copland's Appalachian Spring. Quincy Jones wanted to hear some Debussy. Judy Collins, of course, sang Amazing Grace. It was very, very powerful in the context of news that stays news. After an earlier terror, this was the slaughters in Sarajevo, the New Yorker magazine ran a profile of the judge at the War Tribunal in The Hague. And the reporter asked him, how is it possible for you to go into that courtroom every single day and listen to accounts of so many unimaginable atrocities? And the judge's answer came very quickly. He said, during breaks in the trial, I go regularly to look at the Vermeers. The Dutch masters, serene women, there they are, lost in thought, caught in moments between moments, as if they were collecting themselves for the next event in their day. Those images helped the judge to return to the horrors that he had to hear in order to do justice once the courtroom recitations and all the accusations were over. A year ago, January, 6 months into what has to be called the civil war in Syria, I spotted a piece of embroidery over at the Textile Museum, the grand old building in Washington. And that piece of fabric stayed with me for weeks until I just knew it was working on me, that I had to do some kind of a story about it. It was an exquisite, small, brimless cap embroidered in silk and metallic threads. It had flower patterns all over it and in beautiful colors, deep reds and browns and pinks. The cap was made in Aleppo, Syria, in the year 1800. Aleppo had been in the news almost daily when I saw that cap. It still is. Stories of government attacks on the rebels there, daily bombings that were shelling parts of the town into oblivion. Today's Aleppo is a rubble heap, but I wondered what it had been like when that tapestry cap was made. I found an art history professor at UC Davis who said it was like Chicago back then. It was a transportation hub, a center of trade and manufacture. When the cap was made, Aleppo was also a major textile center. It was full of workshops where silk was woven and crafted. And who would have worn that cap? I began to wonder. See, just a single object that can provoke so many questions and really open a world, give you a new and different way to look and learn about history. So I wondered who wore it, and I was told it was a woman who had to have had some money, the professor said, to be able to afford it, and who could stroll with her chaperone through Aleppo markets, which were markets that were offering exotic wares from all over the world. And if she grew tired of shopping, she could sit and relax over a cup of coffee. This is a drink that was starting to be popular around the world then. She could hear music from local performers or listen to a professional storyteller. They didn't have radios then. And then in my story, Kelly McEvers, who covered events in Syria for us in those days, described walking through parts of Aleppo those days when buildings had crumbled to the ground, their sides were blown off, just sheared off, neighborhoods that had become wastelands in the conflict. The professor, the name was Hegner Wattenpaul, an historian of Islamic art, said that historically Aleppo was a vibrant and resilient city. It had a genius for reinventing itself and finding new ways of expressing its energy. She was hopeful that Aleppo would tap that energy once again. Well, the conflict continues in Syria. I fear that too often we become numb from the pervasive conflict in our world. We have Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Nigeria, these days the Sudan. So I was happy because of that tasseled tapestry, Aleppian cap, to be able to fix on the conflict through this single small object of beauty, to remind listeners of better days, and to create a kind of perspective through art that might fix our attention for just a few moments. As I told you, I've loved the arts for a lifetime, and I've covered the arts for 3 decades now on NPR. But starting with the tragedy of September 11th, and now through all the tragedies since, I have come to understand the arts in a new way, and I wonder if you will share this perception with me as I share it with you. For me, art, music, drama, literature, all my life has always been a great escape. It's been a place to go, to be away for a while. The musical offerings on Morning Edition in the fall of 2001 certainly served that purpose, helped us to escape for a while. But I began to see that escape is not the final goal, that art, that great art, takes us away from the present and engages, clears, airs out our minds, not only as a respite, but so that we can go back to our realities refreshed, better able to do the ordinary and the difficult tasks that we have to confront every single day. It doesn't have to take a terrible tragedy like the Twin Tower attacks or a war to make the refuge of art necessary. Our lives in peacetime, if we can remember what that was like, are fragmented enough, pressured enough, that we need to keep great art, paintings, plays, symphonies, jazz, to keep them around simply to get through the day. Art saves the world in immense and also small ways. But the mission of the arts, of course, is not therapy. That's a side benefit. The mission, I think, is transcendence, moving us out of our immediate worlds and up into other realms of familiar, sometimes more importantly, unfamiliar feelings and perceptions, letting us encounter thoughts and visions we have never seen or thought of before, and letting us make discoveries, be puzzled, be intrigued, be enraged, be disgusted, furious, whatever it is, letting us grow and stretch and become more than what we are. Robert Frost once wrote that home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Do you know that quote? It's from a poem he wrote in 1914 called Home Burial. Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Well, I feel that the arts are places we have to go. And they take us in always, to welcome and expose us to the truths of our times, to help us look at ourselves in fresh ways, to synthesize through creativity and discovery our feelings, our fears, our aspirations, to help us express what has been inexpressible beyond the ordinary day-to-day language that we are able to create. This is why art matters so much, why you preserve it in your libraries and deal with it and respond to requests for it as often as you do. And it's why it's so wonderful to be with you today, to celebrate something that makes and has to continue to make such a difference to the quality and the texture of our lives. Thank you so much for what you do, and thank you so much for inviting me here to talk with you about it. Thank you.
Truly brilliant. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming today and addressing us. It is my pleasure now to begin our awards section of the program. I was told there were trophies. It's my pleasure to introduce Viveca Pattison Robichaud, who is the chair of the Travel Awards Committee.
Hello. I'd like to thank the members of my committee for helping select these winners. So, the conference attendance award goes to Emily Matthews. And the Merrill Wadsworth Smith Architecture Award goes to Rebecca Price. The Student Conference Attendance Award goes to Courtney Barron. The Howard Carno Award goes to Bolton Daub. The Andrew Cahan Photography Award goes to Deirdre Donahue. The Student Diversity Award goes to Sun Young Park. And the Judith A. Hoffberg Student Award goes to Sarah Seymour. And I'll now introduce Amy Ballmer, the chair of the Internship Award Committee.
Hi. I'd also like to thank the members of the award committee that I'm representing, the Internship Award, Philip Dombowski, Bailey Diers, Gina Solaris, Tracy Timmons, and Rebecca Cooper, who is making all of this happen with her leadership. In addition to that committee, this Wolfgang Freitag Internship Award would not be possible without the generous donation of our society circle members. Thank you so much. So, oh, no, it's already there. There's no surprise. Oh, well. So the 2014 Wolfgang M. Freitag Internship Award is Margaret Amon Wilson. Margaret is a recent graduate of the Master of Library and Information Science program at St. Catherine University in St. Paul. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and French from St. Olaf College in Minnesota. And she is going to be doing her internship at the National Museum of Women in the Arts Museum here in Washington, D.C. She is going to start that on Monday. So congratulations, Margaret. And now here's Philip Dombowski. Sorry.
Thank you, Amy. First, a bit of context. The Gerd Newsome Award recognizes excellence in a graduate student paper or web project on a subject relevant to art librarianship. The award was established in 1980 to honor the memory of Gerd Newsome, an art librarian, scholar, and longstanding supporter of ARLIS. Newsome spent most of her career as a librarian at Cooper Union in New York after fleeing Nazi Germany with her family in the late 1930s. Before presenting the award, I'd like to thank my colleagues on the committee for their work: Sarah Osborne-Bender, Elizabeth Ernst, Ellen Michelson, and Anna Simon. Based on their insights, I'm pleased to announce that this year's winner of the Gerd Newsome Award is Jasmine Burns for her essay, Digital Facsimiles and the Modern Viewer, Medieval Manuscripts and Archival Practice in the Age of New Media. The paper was written as a master's thesis in art history at Binghamton University and was selected by the committee for its blend of relevance, sophistication, and scholarship. Jasmine is currently enrolled in the MLIS program at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She will present her paper at the New Voices session tomorrow morning. So on behalf of the committee, congratulations. Jasmine, there you are. Okay. And now Deborah Kemp will present the Samuel H. Kress Foundation Award for International Travel.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be able to announce what is a newly expanded series of awards from the Samuel H. Kress Foundation for International Travel. While we have had awards for a number of years past, this year we're so pleased that the Kress Foundation and its president, Max Marmer, have supported our mission and goals and our experience with administering this award by by giving extra funding for 5 years now program. This is the first of 5 where we'll be able to offer many more, and it's just a real terrific thing that we've been able to expand it out. And in fact, there are a number of people, so rather than having them come up front, there's so many, we'll ask that those of you who are here to please stand up. It was a competitive process. There was a panel who helped make the difficult decisions of who to select, but for this year, there actually, and for the years going forward, there will be 2 categories. One which is to allow our colleagues in Europe to come to the ARLIS conference each year and participate, collaborate, present, and provide professional development here at our conferences. And the second is to allow our members to travel outside of North America to likewise participate in conferences abroad. And I would like to tell you who those are. So in the category of European librarians, we have Alexandra Büttner from Germany. And if you're here, please do stand up. Geert-Jan Koot from Netherlands, and we'll give everyone a round at the end. Evelyn Morgenstern from Germany, Rüdiger Hoyer from Germany, Andrea Leiden from Ireland, and Elizabeth Buchstorff from France. And and from our own membership, we will have 5 winners this year. As it happens, they will all be attending the meeting of the IFLA World Conference. Meetings will take place in France. And they are Walter Schlecht, Jonathan Franklin, Hannah Bennett, Isabel Marangelli, and Lindsay King. Again, if you would stand up, I congratulate you all. And I can't see everyone out there, but if Max Marmer, who is the president of the Kress Foundation, is here, I certainly send all of our thanks for this wonderful support which affirms our programs. I now introduce to the podium Shalimar White and Karen Hinkle.
Good evening. I'm Shalimar White, the chair of the Research Awards Subcommittee. And this is my co-chair, Karen Hinkle.
The ARLIS and A Research Awards recognize and reward the contributions that ARLIS members make to the field of art librarianship and art information. They are made possible by the support and generosity of their sponsors, Worldwide Books and the H.W. Wilson Foundation. On behalf of the Research Awards Subcommittee, I would like to express our profound gratitude to both of these benefactors for their continuing support of art librarianship, which allows us to recognize the research achievements of our colleagues here tonight.
Karen and I are also deeply indebted to the members of our Research Awards Subcommittee for all of their wonderful work this year. Megan Bettag, Suzanne Rackover, Sarah Stigberg, Rena Vecchiola, Hilary Vieder, and Catherine Ziefel. The Worldwide Book Award for Publications and the Worldwide Book Awards for Electronic Resources recognize outstanding publications in print and online by individual ARLIS NA members in art librarianship, visual resources curatorship, and the arts. By recognizing special achievement in these areas, the award acknowledges and encourages scholarly publication by the ARLIS NA membership. And this year's winner is Marilee Snow, editor of the beautiful and comprehensive book, California Society of Printmakers 100 Years, 1913 to 2013. An honorable mention was awarded to Heather Slania for her article, Online Art Ephemera, Web Archiving and the National Museum of Women in the Arts, which was published in the spring 2013 issue of Art Documentation. A separate award for the electronic resources was not awarded this year, but please join us in recognizing Heather's article on a timely and important topic and congratulating Marilee on the major achievement of her book.
While the Worldwide Books Awards for publications reward completed published projects, the H.W. Wilson Foundation Research Award provides financial support for members' proposed future research projects in the fields of librarianship, visual resources, curatorship, and the arts. There are 2 winners of the awards this year. The first winner is Bronwyn L. Dorharper for her project to create an authoritative website on the American photographer Nancy Ford Cones, entitled A Twilight Mood, the Pictorialist Photography of Nancy Ford Cones. Bronwyn will receive $1,500 towards the travel expenses for her research project. The second winner is Jay Fischel for her project to create an online catalog raisonné for the Nexus Press, a publisher of artist books and editions from 1989 to 2003 in Atlanta, Georgia. Jay will also receive $1,500 toward the travel expenses for her project.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Daniel Payne will award the Melva J. Dwyer Award.
The Melva J. Dwyer Award Committee received 11 nominations this year. Each publication presented such uniquely valuable contributions to Canadian art, design, architecture, and visual culture studies that it made a challenging evaluation process. Despite this, there was unified consensus amongst the jurors that one title stood out as truly representing an exceptional reference or research tool relating to Canadian art and architecture. I am pleased to confer the 2014 Melva J. Dwyer Award to Native... Oh. Come on. Okay, there you go. Native Art of the Northwest Coast, A History of Changing Ideas, edited by Charlotte Townsend Galt, Jennifer Kramer, and K.K. In, published by the University of British Columbia Press, 2013. The 2014 jurors included Claire Parker, Visual Resources Librarian, Western University, Sylvia Roberts, Liaison Librarian for Communications and Contemporary Arts, Simon Fraser University, Rebecca Young, University Librarian, NASCAD University. Each juror was riveted by the integrity and authenticity of the 30 essays included in this anthology, the rigorous indexing, the awe-inspiring breadth and scope and content. Most compellingly, how the overall thematic structure of the work represents a holistic Indigenous worldview. If I may, I would like to present a quote from Michelle Paquette's ARLIS NA Reviews from 2014. This is not a standard reference publication emanating from the European Enlightenment tradition. Native Art of the Northwest Coast subtly questions modes of organization grounded in either chronological or subject-based ordering by employing a conceptual structure rooted in Indigenous narrative practice. Perhaps most indicative of this impulse is the inclusion of an introductory chapter by Michael Nicole Yagulanis, who presents a Haida manga depiction of Indian cosmology and consciousness. Each ensuing chapter features expository essays that are used to contextualize numerous historical transcripts transcribed in each section. These testimonials are expansive in scope, giving voice to a diverse array of observers and participants, both native and non-native, including elders, activists, artists, anthropologists, curators, art historians, legal experts, and many others. Presenting this narrative frame around the primary source material creates a dialogic authorial voice that guides readers through the challenging work of confronting Western European preconceptions about art, culture, and history. For above all, the central theme and thread running through each chapter is a plea to those of us looking at Northwest Coast art to move beyond a one-dimensional viewing experience and begin listening to the story of the artwork. In short, instead of just using your eyes, use your ears. Be assured, however, for those that may start feeling bibliographic anxiety over the unconventional formatting, Native Art of the Northwest Coast is a product of over 10 years of research and offers a comprehensive review of 250 years of historical literature. The essays featured in this 1,000-page publication are all-encompassing, covering topics such as the evolution of the Northwest Coast art market, the deployment of Native art for Canadian nationalist purposes, the influence of First Nations culture on surrealist thinking, the recent explosion of Indigenous voices in new media production. An exhaustive index not only supports expected access and searchability features, but is a work of art in its own right, as it provides the ethical framework for the entirety of the 30 essays. The predominance of entries that offer conceptually expressive themes might seem unexpectedly poetic for a reference tome, but are in fact critical for providing the Indigenous values that tangibly bind together the diversity of material presented in the essays. The subtitle, A History of Changing Ideas, is significant as well. In many First Nations cultures, foundational stories are not mythic narratives frozen in some chronologically distant past, but are in fact animate. Stories change over time by revealing new essential truths and meanings as they are told and retold in different cultural and historical contexts. This phenomenological approach is the embodiment of an oral cultural conceptualization of the world, a stance rooted in a knowledge base that emanates from the intersection of empirical observation, fact, metaphor, intuition, conceptual thinking, and above all, is only achieved through dialogue and consensus amongst interlocutors. Although such a fluid aggregation of subjects may make us librarians profoundly uncomfortable, Native Art of the Northwest Coast truly embodies a post-colonial voice by taking the genre of reference and reframing it through the lens of Indigenous ways of knowing. In this light, the theme of the ARLIS NA conference, Art Plus Politics, is a fitting tribute for this award-winning title. Accepting the award is Mr. Paul Chad of the Comanche First Nations and his wife, Lenore Williams. He is an associate curator of the National Museum of the American Indian and was a founding editor of the American Indian Movement's Treaty Council News. In addition to the essay he wrote for Native Art of the Northwest, he has co-authored the seminal text, Like a Hurricane, the Indian Movement from Alcatraz to Wounded Knee, and is author of Everything You Know About Indians Is Wrong. D. Vanessa Cam will be accepting the award as well. She is the acting head librarian from the Music, Art, Architecture Library at the University of British Columbia. And now I invite Janine Henry to present the George M. Wittenborn Memorial Book Award.
Okay. Hello. I have the pleasure and honor to introduce the 2013 George Wittenborn Memorial Book Award. Established by ARLIS NA in 1980, the George Wittenborn Memorial Book Award honors the memory of George Wittenborn, a premier New York art book dealer and publisher who was a strong supporter of ARLIS NA in its formative years. This prestigious award is presented annually to publications demonstrating excellence in art publishing. The George Wittenborn Memorial Book Award Committee reviewed submissions of notable art books published during the past year. Titles were evaluated for excellence in content, documentation, layout, and format. Titles eligible for consideration included print and electronic books, exhibition catalogs, and new periodical titles in any language published in 2013 and originating from a North American publisher. From these titles, a single exemplary publication was chosen to receive the 2013 George Whittenborn Memorial Book Award. So before I announce the award, let me acknowledge the other members of the 2013 committee: Leslie Abrams from the University of California at San Diego, Laurel Bliss from San Diego State University, Lisa Shatman from the Design Institute of San Diego, and Ruth Wallach from the University of Southern California. Thank you, committee members, for all your dedicated service to ARLIS-NA and the committee. So now for the announcement of the award-winning publication, which is The Interaction of Color by Joseph Albers, App for iPad, from Yale University Press, produced and edited by Sarah Sapire, new Business and Product Development Manager, and Michelle Comey, former Senior Editor, Art and Architecture, both from Yale University Press. Also Brenda Danilovitz, Chief Curator from the Joseph and Annie Albers Foundation, Philip Johnson and Abby Palmer from Potion Design. 50 years after its first publication, Joseph Albers' Interaction of Color is widely revered as one of the most influential art books ever written. This iPad app honors and enhances the masterpiece and was designed to engage and benefit artists and design practitioners across disciplines, arts educators, students, and anyone who wishes to learn more about color. So if we can have the Thank you. The book's full text and over 125 original image plates are preserved and enriched with interactive text, plate commentary, over 2 hours of new and archival video, and seamless navigation among text, plates, and commentary. Many of the plates are interactive, and users can move or lift pieces of the plates in order to experiment with and better understand color theory and behavior. A groundbreaking new palette tool allows users to create their own solutions to Albers' famous color problems. These interactive features were inspired by Albers' renowned teaching practice of having students work with cut and colored paper. With the Interaction of Color app, users' favorite colors, palettes, and solutions to color problems can be saved and exported. Interaction of Color was created by Joseph Albers as a classroom teaching tool, and it has been used continuously in color courses for half a century. In addition to the features that made the book so important and useful, this app provides a wealth of supplemental material and interactivity for a new way to explore color and Joseph Albers' ideas. Committee members describe this publication as transformational, an excellent model for present-day art publishing that takes advantage of interactive media. The archival and documentary videos serve to explicate the artist's ideas and place the original publication in a scholarly context. In addition, the format appropriately builds on the Interaction of Color's teaching mission, bringing it to a contemporary audience. Sarah Sapire will be accepting the award on behalf of Yale University Press.
Good evening. It is my distinct honor and privilege to announce that this year's Distinguished Service Award recipient is none other than Joan Benedetti. By the way, I'm John Evans. Anyone who has spent more than 5 minutes with Joan can attest to her charming nature, her infectious smile, her genuine curiosity, and her tenacious character. I myself confess to having been won over many years ago after imbibing a bit of the Benedetti Kool-Aid. But before I digress too far into my own drinking habits, I want to acknowledge those individuals who have made this award possible. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank the DSA committee, who deserve our praise for reviewing each of the nomination packets this year. The committee was comprised of its intrepid leader, Ms. Jennifer Parker, as well as members Rena Vecchiola, Alexander Gregory, and Mr. Ted Goodman. I also want to acknowledge my co-conspirators who helped in the nominating campaign, including my former Tex-Mex colleague, Janine Henry, or as some say, Janine Henry, who now plays for the smaller California branch of the Texas-Mexico chapter, as well as Joyce Weaver, who was the primary instigator in nominating Joan. And I'm sorry to say that Joyce could not be here with us this evening, but I'm certain that she would be here in spirit to celebrate the occasion. Joan Benedetti's career has been a long, varied, and distinguished one that began back in 1967. The dossier submitted to the DSA subcommittee was not surprisingly substantial and full of noteworthy achievements. Rather than enumerate each of these, I thought I would share a few of the qualities that exemplify Joan as an individual and as a professional. And for those of you who know her, those two things are in fact difficult to separate. In reading through the many, many letters of support from a huge range of individuals from a cross-section of time that is rather incredible, several common elements reverberated again and again. The first of which was a dedication to service, a commitment to scholarship, leadership through word and deed, and a passion for our field and in particular for ARLIS NA. Joan also carries with herself a relentless spirit, what one former employer expressed as, I quote, a model of extraordinary persistence. Where I come from, that's a euphemism for something I can't repeat here in such genteel company. I would add one additional quality of my own, which is compassion. Many of Joan's initiatives over the years have focused on those individuals or voices on the outside, those marginalized or otherwise neglected. Joan has worked tirelessly to rectify these wrongs in her life and her work and through her actions and deeds as an ARLIS NA member. And for this, I think we are all honored to call her one of our own. If ever there was an individual who from birth grasped for the glory of the Kinko's 20-weight paper emblazoned with the new ARLIS NA logo and the auspicious acronym of DSA, that person is none other than Joan Benedetti, attempting to wrest it from the hands of one Ted Goodman. Please join me in welcoming our own tenacious bee and this year's Distinguished Service Award recipient, Joan Benedetti.
This is so unbelievable to get this award at all, and in this setting, and with Susan Stomberg in the audience. It's amazing. But Greg is going to kill me, or at least get out the big hook if I don't get going. So here I go. I did want to say that I'm indebted to Ted Goodman when I was trying to decide what in the world I could say. I was, of course, thrilled when Greg told me about this award a couple of months ago, but I was also terrified, and I still am, I guess, a little shaky voiced. But just like Ted Goodman, I thought, What in the world am I going to wear? And then, what am I going to say? So I decided, following Ted's lead, to show you some pictures that seemed appropriate, and to tell you some things about me that you may not know. You might call it a case study. Am I pushing the button right, or, oh, I have to, forward, sorry. So that's me, of course, about a year-old, already a book in my hand, in our Manhattan apartment, circa the daughter of two librarians who had just received their library degrees from Columbia University when they were still giving those out, and that was across the street. My dad's part-time job was typing Avery index cards. It's true, I just found that out not too long ago. And here's me and my dad on the roof of the apartment building. He was in the Merchant Marine, and he became the head of the Merchant Marine Library. My mom headed two New York public branch libraries, and incidentally, they were both artists. But in spite of my parentage, I never thought about being a librarian. I wanted to be an actress. That's me on the left. At Indiana University's Brown County Playhouse. The story of how I got to Indiana is a whole other event, which Greg wouldn't let me do. So after marriage and my first baby, I got my BA in theater with a minor in art, in spite of the fact that there were classes there at IU taught by Ted Bowie and Henry Hope. Why I didn't major in art and minor in theater, I'll never know. But at my mother's urging, I went to talk to her friend, who was the new head of library science in the program at IU. And this was unfortunately before B.J. Irvine was there. So I thought, well, if I had to be a librarian, I'd like to be a children's librarian. After all, I love children's literature. So here I am, circa 1960, at my first professional job as a children's librarian in Gary, Indiana. My acting experience came in handy for story hours. We called them story hours, but. So by 1967, we had moved to Milwaukee, where by chance I got a job as decorative arts librarian at the Milwaukee Public Library. Fast forward to 1975, Los Angeles, and the middle of a pretty bad recession, and two more kids. After an 8-year hiatus as a full-time wife and mother, I was ready to go back to work. But it took a while. And a chance encounter at a cocktail party with a woman on the CalArts board changed my life. Edith Wiley. Yes, she would turn out to be the grandmother of Noah Wiley, though not yet. She was turning a gallery and a restaurant called The Egg in the Eye into a museum called the Craft and Folk Art Museum, or CAFAM. There's the restaurant. I didn't know anything about museum libraries, but I asked her if she had thought about including a library, and she said yes. I started at CAFAM in 1976, They were putting on the first of what would be an annual festival of masks, and thousands came. And they came again and again, year after year, for about 20 years. Yes, I started as a scab, a volunteer, in a small room shared with a copying machine and other volunteers. But I was head of the library. Shortly after starting to work at CAFM, though, another encounter enriched my professional life forever. I met Eleanor Hartman, head of the LA County Museum of Art, LACMA Library, and heard about this new library organization, ARLIS. ARLIS gave me the confidence to be a real art librarian. And I met Judy Hoffberg, who lived in LA and was working on the 1977 LA conference. That was my introduction to LA. We had just moved there about a year before. And it was a wonderful conference and a wonderful introduction to LA. So by 1978, 3 successful grant proposals after I had started at CAFM, we moved the library around the corner from the museum into a small Spanish-style cottage. I had the first of many unpaid interns and my first part-time assistant, and we were there happily for 10 years. So in the meantime, I just went to every annual conference. It wasn't always easy. I usually had to pay my own way, which wasn't always easy at that time. And at the 1983 conference in Philadelphia, we heard that LA would again be the conference site in 1985. And Joyce Ludmer whispered in my ear, "You could do it. You could chair the conference." Well, you know how that is when you volunteer for ARLIS. Somehow, with an amazing committee, many of whom are here tonight, we got it done. And here we are at the Convocation, held at the old Getty, now the Getty Villa, in 1985. In 1989, the CAFM building was closed for earthquake retrofitting, just beginning to happen in LA. And the whole operation, that is all of the Craft and Folk Art Museum, moved into the nearby landmark department store, the May Company. The library was on the mezzanine overlooking the perfume counter. And it wasn't a bad space at all. There's my first and only full-time assistant, Michelle Ahrens, now in Australia. We had just received another big grant from the Irvine Foundation. The James Irvine Foundation was our major donor for the library. The grant was to develop a Center for the Study of Art and Culture, CSAC, an adjunct of the library. Among the things that CSAC did, of which I am most proud, was to produce a series of workshops on diversity and inclusion, specifically targeting museum staff and board members. Teams of 14 LA area museums signed up. And Toni Peterson, she's over on the right, the middle right, and Elizabeth Byrne were both on our advisory board, which included scholars of art and culture from all over the US. But just 3 years later, the May Company department store closed, and we moved back to CAFM's original space, now safely retrofitted And we had a rather large earthquake in 1994, which proved that the retrofitting worked. It was redesigned by Hodges and Fung, incorporating a building on the corner. What our former parking space there in the middle became a rather beautiful patio, and there was a water feature. And at the time, we had a very large parking lot, so that was not a problem. We lost that later, but that's another story. So I designed another library. Are you keeping track of the number of libraries? This was number 4, and we got a beautiful new sign. And my idea to name the library after the founder didn't help in the long run, because 2 years later, CAFM closed again, and this time we thought it was forever. That's actually Craig Hodgetts there on the middle right. Many meetings were held in the library to decide what to do. And I'm sorry to say it was decided to sell the permanent object collection. And what to do about the library? Well, instead of packing it up, which I knew would mean that it would disappear forever, we decided to give it away. And then everyone was laid off. And this was when my ARLIS network really came through for me. After 21 years, I was a volunteer again. And I got on the phone to my Southern California chapter colleagues, and we received proposals for 8 area art libraries, from 8 area art libraries, to take the CAFM library. In the middle of a very sad situation, that was a very heartwarming moment. And then someone came to me and said, what are we going to do with all of these files that we've been discovering here and there in cupboards and closets? And well, that turned out to be 32 years worth of museum staff files, including slides and films and exhibition catalogs and announcements, and the usual thing for an institutional archive that would otherwise have been thrown away. The library, and here's Alexis Curry, who of course is the current LACMA librarian sitting at their beautiful desk. The library was given to LACMA. Around 7,000 volumes at that point. But thanks to Debbie Smedstad, I got to go along too. There was a part-time cataloging position available, and at that time I really thought that was the thing that I wanted to do most. Here's my cubby. And the CAFM library went back to the May Company, which by that time had been purchased by LACMA and was now known as LACMA West. This time, it went into what had been, here's some before pictures, what had been the back room of the linen department. I don't know if you can see that, but that's what was on the back wall. It turned out to be pretty nifty looking, actually, after it was redesigned. CAFM, by the way, reopened 18 months later. And the CAFM archives, well, they went to UCLA Arts Special Collection, as it was called at the time, and then later it went to UCLA Special Collections. And this is the back room where I worked a couple of days a week. My job at LACMA was just part-time, so I came here for almost 13 years, a couple of days a week. That is the range of, it was actually both sides of the range of stacks. Here's Linda Cluzal, who was one of 3 graduate fellows who helped me to process 250 cubic foot boxes into 550 archival boxes. That's 225 linear feet. It's one of their largest collections. Well, during all this time, ARLIS helped keep me sane. Mari Russell and I co-chaired a panel on Native American contemporary art. Here we are with Chiricahua Apache art historian Nancy Mythlow and Maidu artist, contemporary artist Harry Fonseca, who passed away a few years ago. Twelve years ago, I retired. I retired from LACMA, and that began one of the most satisfying parts of my life. Finally, I had time to write. I had reflected on the differences and the similarities between working for a small, specialized art museum and a very large encyclopedic art museum. And I persuaded the ARLIS Publications Committee to let me edit a book, Art Museum Libraries and Librarianship, co-published by ARLIS and Scarecrow Press in 2007. By the way, having a book project like this and working with really over 50, there were 45 essayists, but then there were others who contributed thumbnail sketches of their libraries. It's a good way to get to know your colleagues. So 4.5 years ago, we moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And this is how I envisioned my future there. But of course, I've become involved with the Mountain West chapter. There we are in Santa Fe, eating and drinking. And there we are at UNM in Albuquerque. And we ate and drank later. And Benny and I, my husband and I, live within sight of the Museum of International Folk Art on Museum Hill. I recommend you all come and visit. It has the largest collection of international folk art in the world. And so, naturally, I've been working for their support group, the Friends of Folk Art. In fact, we're about to publish a 20th anniversary book, a history written by me, about the Friends of Folk Art. And there I am at the Folk Art Flea, which is normally an annual event. It's not happening this year, but last year it raised $92,000 for the museum. But I have a new bumper sticker on my car. I'd rather be reading. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joan. That was wonderful. And as we both said, no hook. It's been a wonderful evening. But before we go out into the reception, if we could have the house lights up, please. I wanted to do something that has a twofold purpose. There's always a method to my madness. I wanted, because we have a rather large percentage of former presidents of the Society here in the audience tonight, I'd like to ask them to stand, and if you would give them a round of applause, they are going to lead us into the reception.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.